Okay, Jim, go ahead and make your way on up. Okay, and here's the pointer.
Super. And go back. All right.
All right, let's give Jim our attention. It's all yours, sir.
Good evening. Tonight, pardon? Oh, sure enough.
Oh yeah, if you want it, you don't have it. You don't need to use it if you don't want to. You don't have to.
I may or may not. We'll see. Thanks for the podium.
If you want the podium, you
You can hide behind it.
How about that? How about
Super.
That? Is that good?
Super.
That's really sturdy too.
Yeah, it is. Good evening. I'm just going to touch base with you guys very briefly on Wi-Fi. It's a very broad topic, so this will be a sort of a cursory discussion of what exactly Wi-Fi is and the history of it and some of the protocols. I got to point it there. All right, so when you think of Wi-Fi, most people think of its network, right? It's the wireless network, according to 802.11 standards. It also happens to be a brand name that is trademark for the Wi-Fi Alliance, which I didn't realize. Those little Wi-Fi things with the lines on it that you see, that's part of their branding and trademark and all of the stuff that goes along with that. So, but for the purposes of this presentation, we're primarily going to discuss the standard. Okay, so history of Wi-Fi. Back in 1980, a guy named Michael Marcus, an FCC engineer, suggested to the FCC, we need to open up the garbage bands. He called them the garbage bands. They were for medical and industrial types of applications. And he said we should open these up. At the time, there were no radio frequencies that were non-licensed. So he wanted to open them up so that anybody could use them without having to, license them with the FCC and pay for them and all that good stuff. So it actually was officially done in 1985 by the FCC. Those bands were the 900 megahertz band, the 2.4 gigahertz, that sound right? Yeah, and the 5 gigahertz band. And so in 1985, okay, you guys can use this. There were a number of organizations that tried some different proprietary things, and none of them worked together, that sort of thing. And then in 1988, NCR wanted to install wireless cash registers in installations. And so they got with one of their engineers, Victor Hayes, and said, hey, Victor, why don't you go talk to somebody about getting a standard started? And he and another gentleman who wasn't as I don't have his name off the top of my head, but they started a standard. They got with the IEEE. Victor Hayes was actually appointed to the chair of the committee that oversaw that. He's kind of considered the father of Wi-Fi for that reason. There's someone else that I more likely consider the father of Wi-Fi, and that's Dr. Alex Hills. He's a professor at Carnegie Mellon. He's one of these guys that was really into radio waves and stuff like that. And he's got together with some students and an organization, a company, to put in a Wi-Fi network at Carnegie Mellon for the instructors, for all the professors and staff and faculty and that sort of thing. So that started in 1993, before there was a standard. And that was a huge amount of information and research went into the standard based on the work that he did. The thing that's kind of interesting to hear him tell it, that it was only for faculty, but there were a lot of students that hacked into it. So he found he thought that was fine. I mean, he was okay with that. So he's an interesting guy. He's actually learned how to, he helped some of the Native Alaskans, just interesting guy, Native Alaskans, before he started on this work, get telephone service by bouncing radio waves off of the mountains in Russia so that they could actually get reception. It's interesting. The whole story is interesting. There's a whole book that he's written about this. So in 1997, the first 802.11 standard was adopted. And then following on that, there were quite a few others. So that goes over here. Did I skip one? No, there we go. Okay, so you guys have seen all these standards. We've talked about a lot of them. What I'm going to just very basically, if you look at the last two columns here, or the last three columns, all the way across, you go from 802.11, then B and A. Those came on pretty quickly. A is at a higher frequency, so the range isn't as nearly as good. That's one of the reasons it wasn't adopted. It also was a little bit later in standardization. G came about after that. N came about. N was one of the next really big developments because they did this MIMO, which is basically multiple antennas. So you can have multiple antennas on a router, wireless router, that or switch or that sort of thing. That it can talk and it can transmit and receive the device at the same time. So it speeds things up quite nicely. So that's the current standard where we are now. They're working on 802.11ac, which has it's in the 5 gigahertz band. So based on what we've learned about frequency and range and all of that, I wasn't able to locate a lot of information about what the range is going to be. But I suspect that it'll probably be somewhere between, I don't know, 200, probably 200 to 300 ballpark. Maybe more, maybe less. I don't know exactly because I don't have all the details. And what's interesting here is that it's up to 6.9 gigabits per second, theoretically. There's not a lot of information on what the actual throughput is at this point because you don't really find that out until it's out there in the real world. 802.11ad is a standard that's being pushed by the Gigabit Alliance, and it runs at the 60 gigahertz band, which is way up there. It's expected that that's basically going to be kind of across the room kind of range, so that you can have your laptop or whatever and you can stream to your TV, that sort of thing. It's for video primarily, they think. So security history. So you got all the standards, all the stuff that happened. In the 802.11 standard, there's actually not a real security specification. So there was sort of this WEP early on, but first thing was Open System Association. Basically, it's a free-for-all. If you can get the signal, you can, hang out, connect, that sort of thing. One of the reasons that it wasn't adopted early on by businesses, among others. Then came about WEP, which is Shared Key Authentication, which is wireless encryption protocol, is what they call it. Basically, you've got a password that everybody gets that wants to connect to this network. The password is kind of encrypted. It's not very strong encryption. And the data that is transmitted after that is pretty much wide open, so people can listen to it. Vulnerabilities about that, again, were per packet master key reuse, so the key gets transmitted, and even if it's encrypted, every packet that gets transmitted. And some of the data I saw said that in as little as 40,000 packets, there's some algorithms that can hack into this, so it doesn't take very long. Everybody in the group uses the same keys. There's no authentication of the client to the network. So if you have the password, they're like, oh, okay, you must be okay. You can join in, and some other things along those lines. So that's the encryption. Now the next standard that came about was the WPA and the WPA2. These are the 802.11i specification, which is the security specification. They basically made some changes to this so that the session keys are changed every time. They use pseudo-random function. I'm going to read this to you. The pseudo-random function using nonces, counters, MAC addresses, time, and random numbers. So it takes all these things into consideration, and it encrypts it based on that. And so you have a different key every time you have a new session. So you log in to it every time you log in. You don't use the same key. It's generated on the fly. The keys are more secure once you get there because they've changed out the initialization vector, which basically it's got higher. The area for encrypting the key is larger. It's got a greater size in the packet there. Also, this pairwise transient keys. So again, it's related to the other. They change the keys every time. They added a sequence number to the packets as they're going through. So what happens is, so as we studied earlier, the sequence numbers you increase by 1 every time it moves, bounces. So if that sequence number gets over a certain number, then they discard the packet and they change they basically cut you off. And then they also added into this network authentication, with the 802.1x standard, which should not be confused with wireless. And I'll get into that in just a minute. That's actually a pretty cool thing. I got really interested in that. So as part of this, they also added the personal PS key, which is the pre-shared key, versus enterprise. Enterprise requires a radius server. And I noticed somebody's probably going to get into radius servers maybe a little bit more detail, but a radius server basically has to do with authentication of, it originally was for dial-up, like when you would dial into your ISP or whatever, it would authenticate you to their server, and then it would say, yeah, you're valid. WPA uses TKIP for the encryption, and then there's WPA2, which is the later standard, not too long after WPA. It uses the AES, which is a standard out there that's pretty heavy duty, the advanced encryption standard. And it also leverages the AES for the encryption of the data in the packets. So it's stronger than the WPA. Now, why is there WPA and WPA2? When they figured out all these web vulnerabilities, it was a disaster. I mean, basically, it didn't take them long for somebody to figure out that you can get into any router you wanted to using the web. So they wanted something that they could be backward compatible with the current hardware. So they were able to do that with the TKIP and the WPA. So that's why they did that, because then they could just update firmware and that sort of thing. But in the meantime, they were also figuring out ways to use the most advanced encryption standard that they had at the time, which was the AES. So they developed that, and once the hardware became available, then they had the WPA2, and so that's where they are with that. That's sort of the current standard. Okay. There was a vulnerability figured out in the WPA, in the TKIP, and it's related to the sequence number. So a number of, you lose, there's a way to basically hack into packets and sort of piggyback on them or get them to be reused up to 8 or 10 times, I think, which isn't a lot except for when a computer's doing it. And if there's a lot of data and there's not a lot of traffic on the router, then it can change then they can get into things there. So 802.1x, this is actually really cool. It's a wired protocol for port access control. So basically what it does, and it can work in conjunction with a radius server, which is a separate piece of hardware, or it runs on, anyway, it lives in a different place. And you can say they authenticate to the radius server. So what it does is actually, it allows you to turn ports on switches off that are connected. If there's nobody that's an authenticated user, there's no data going to that port. It turns it off completely. So there's no way for somebody to just come in and plug into the LAN and get data on it, because otherwise it's running, all the data's going through there, as we've learned. There's quite a bit of information about this. I'm going to start to wrap things up here, so I'm not going to cover all this in detail, but basically the state of the art out there in the real world right now is using the radius server, is using WPA2 in conjunction with the radius server, and then on top of all of that encryption, you doubly encrypt with a VPN or IPsec encryption over the wireless network. So you've got like multiple layers of encryption. This is what it looks like. Basically, somebody says, hey, I want to talk to the wireless network. The wireless network says, I see somebody who wants to talk to us. Let me go see if you're a valid person. Talks to the radius server. Radius server says, oh, yeah, they're good. And then they say, okay, let's open the port. So they don't even have an IP address before that. Port's open, they start talking to them. They exchange the key for authenticating to the access point, and then they do the encryption and everything else separately. So it's multiple layers security here. All right, so this is just a quick list of things to do to secure your Wi-Fi. Ideally, this is really more for small businesses. Use the WPA encryption, preferably WPA2. You'll have to set that on your router and on your hardware. On your clients. Use the enterprise version of the WPA2, meaning using a radio server. If you don't have a hardware or the infrastructure in place, there's outsourced places that'll do it for you. Secure your Ethernet ports. Don't have anybody just be able to plug into your LAN somewhere. They could plug in a Wi-Fi hotspot or something like that. Use extra encryption, VPNs, that sort of thing. Turn off the auto connect on the clients so that they don't happen to wirelessly connect to somebody that's outside the office, and then all of a sudden they're talking to everybody, sort of bridging things. VLANs, that's something we talked briefly about in your virtual LANs. That's something that you can set up, and it separates the traffic so that you don't have everybody having access to everything, so that if some part of the network does get compromised, it doesn't compromise the whole network. Shared folders and network attached storage, just make sure that somebody can't just walk in and leave with it. Firewalls, make sure they're working. MAC address filtering, we've talked about that, where basically you keep a list of all the MAC addresses for all your hardware, and if the MAC address is different than that piece of hardware can't connect. That does require some overhead. You have to keep a list of the stuff. Disable SSID broadcasting. That's interesting. That didn't occur to me, but that's basically you're communicating already. Just the fact that you're letting people know that you're there. Advanced hackers can get past that and not very long, but it keeps the casual hacker from being able to get in. This is probably one of the more obvious ones that people forget about. Keep your hardware updated. Drivers, patches, make sure you update all that stuff often. Keep Wi-Fi signals contained. Don't put it on top of the building so that it broadcasts 4 blocks across town. Make it so that it's accessible internally, ideally, and not outside the walls. But the other thing is, and this is a newer, some of the newer products out there, is a wireless intrusion prevention system. Basically, some of it is built into the equipment that you buy these days, but it can help you monitor people putting in rogue access points or people just sniffing your network out and that sort of thing. So it sort of monitors the radio wave space around where you are and checks for different types of attacks and that kind of thing. All right, future of Wi-Fi. There's something called Wi-Fi Direct. Everybody should probably know about that. It's part of the protocol that is allowing one client to talk directly to another client without using a switch or a router, and without using an access point. Sounds cool. That could be a security headache for enterprise type installations. Wi-Fi is going to get faster and faster. It's pretty darn secure. Part of the reason I picked some of this topic and focused on it because I didn't really know much about how the security worked. It's pretty good. I mean, somebody's going to figure out how to hack it. Might take a while, but they will, and then they'll figure out how to patch the leaks there. There's also going to be competition from WiMAX, which is the wide area network, basically Wi-Fi, around Chicago or whatever, big area. So people won't have to use Wi-Fi. It's a different standard. It's 802.13, I think, something like that. But could also be co-opetition, as it were. Somebody might use Wi-Fi in conjunction with their WiMAX connection to be able to work together. So that is about the fastest I could cover all of this material about this ginormous topic. Does anybody have any questions? I'm sure there might be a few.
Just one. On hardware, or your suggestion during your research, for consumers to buy a Wi-Fi router, what was the one that you kind of popped out during your research, or maybe in your experience you've seen for home Wi-Fi routers for individuals?
As far as which brand, I don't necessarily have a recommendation there, but you would want to make sure that it has the WPA or the WPA2 security protocol enabled. Pretty much anything you buy today will have that. The trick is that all of your clients need to have the latest as well. So if you've got one client that doesn't, then it can compromise the whole network.
Good presentation. Let's give a hand. Good job. Next up, thank you. And I'm gonna put a little timer up here for you. I'm gonna put this little timer up here for you. That way you can see it.
Here, you can have the remote. I won't change your slides for you.
Yeah, I'm gonna put this little baby up here so you'll know. I'll hit it whenever I go sit down for you.
I'll try to go through fast.
No, you're fine. Just that way I won't be having to fly you back there.
Is this okay?
Okay, what was your,
The antivirus?
no, it's on. My introduction, I was like,
Yeah.
this one right here?
Yeah.
Okay, it's all yours.
And then this way to advance?
Yeah,
This
to the
one?
right is, yeah, to advance, and to the back, to the left is going previous.
All right.
All right, let's get more attention.
All right. I'm going to talk to you a little bit today about antivirus software. Well, the first virus was around in 1971. It was called the Creeper. It was the first known-like virus program. Outcloner was in 1982, and 1983 is when they actually gave the term virus by the researcher Fred Cohen. Methods used to detect threats are actually the dictionary list or the signature method, the behavior or the heuristic, and emulation. The dictionary list, this method searches a database with a list of known reported viruses, also known as the signature. So basically, anybody who, discovers a virus, their software would actually send it to the manufacturer of their vendor, and then it would go on a list. And then, if they're smart, they would pass it on to like the other vendors and stuff like that, and they'll share this just great big list. And so basically, your computer monitors, for any kind of activity and stuff, and the viruses actually have like a signature. So basically, like how you guys all have a signature, you sign your paychecks and stuff like that. Well, viruses have that, and so the antivirus software program searches, for this signature, and then looks at this list and see if it's on this list, and if it is, then it red flags it and says, hey, your computer's infected. The next method is the behavior or the heuristic. This method does not use the dictionary list. It monitors the computer for malicious activity, such as programs trying to overwrite another. This method is for detecting new viruses that are not on the dictionary list. So basically, you install a program, and then it tries to overwrite another execute program, and it's not going to catch it, because if it's not on the list, it's not going to look for a signature. It's not going to be there. So this method is great for catching new viruses. However, it also sounds a large number of false positives, and users probably become desensitized to all the warnings. If the user clicks a step on every such warning, then the antivirus software is obviously useless to that user. This problem has especially been made worse over the past 7 years, since many more non-malicious programs designs chose to modify other execute files without regards to this false positive issue. Thus, this most modern antivirus software uses this technique less and less. Emulation. This method creates a virtual PC environment and examines the code sample file instruction by instruction, emulating the changes caused by the instruction in the emulated environment. If the environment begins to look as it has been infected by a virus, the sample is suspected to contain a virus. So what does it do after it finds a virus and stuff like that? Well, there's basically two methods. It just either deletes or it quarantines the virus. So, so basically, how effective is antivirus software? Well, everything is internal. I mean, like, you don't see what's happening inside your computer when you buy an antivirus software program. You basically have to take the word of the manufacturer saying, hey, we're removing the virus. You're gonna have to take our word for it. You don't know for sure. Like, you take your car into a garage and you say, hey, my alternator's bad. You take that alternator out and you replace it. You know it's good now because it's working. You can see it. You can physically actually see it. Well, this is all happening behind, in code and binary numbers. You can't actually see it. Zero-day viruses are basically brand new viruses that aren't out yet and stuff, and zero-day means that it gives the user zero time to react to protect your computer. With like the new programs and stuff, like to overwrite other files, there's a lot of false alarms. Plus there's the new viruses that are coming out. The new threats are metamorphic, polymorphic, worms, trojans, spyware, spamware, and the list just goes on and on. The average detection for these samples was 24.47%, while the median detection rate was just 19%. This means that if you click a malicious link or open an attachment in one of these emails, there's less than 1 in 5 chances that your antivirus software will detect this as bad. It is estimated that between 100 and 500 new viruses are released into the wild, spreading via the internet every day. So that's quite an alarming number. Symantec was accused of using scareware tactics to get consumers to purchase their full version of the software earlier this year. A quote from the complaint was, the software is falsely informing the consumer that errors are high priority, and in addition, it is falsely informing the consumer that the overall system health and privacy health is low, the complaint stated. So that's like a well-known software vendor. In conclusion, there is a lot of software stuff out there to try and use. I did notice that a lot of the websites I went to, that Kaspersky was always rated in the top 3, and so even along with other manufacturers, they would always like badmouth like other antivirus software. Kaspersky was always in the top 3 for whatever reason. I'm not sure. There are many pros and cons to antivirus software. The pros is the peace of mind, and the security of safeguarding your valuable information. If a threat is detected on a computer, the antivirus software can remove it and save your valuable information before it is destroyed, or worse, for malicious activity. The cons, though. Don't know for sure if the threat is completely removed, because you can't see it. You're just taking the word of the manufacturer for it. Sometimes the viral code cannot be completely removed, only partially removed. So can it be reactivated? If part of the code's already in there, it just maybe needs just an activator to reactivate this code. Continuously runs in the background and taxes computer resources. So depending on the methods it uses, and since there's so many different threats and stuff like that, so it's checked for spyware, spamware, checking for signatures, using the behavioral methods. So it's constantly using your RAM, and your CPU. So if you're doing like a graphic intensive, like in Adobe Photoshop, it's really using the resources and this is all running in the background. And the cost of yearly subscriptions, along with the price of the software. So a lot of the antivirus software vendors want you to purchase, yearly subscriptions for updates and technical supports, and that's to keep it updated and stuff like that. On the bottom line is that there is no 100% way to completely protect your computer. Except for you can educate the users to practice safe computing, use stronger passwords, not to open unknown email documents, to surf well-known websites and stay away from the porn sites. To be smart as where to and how they use their information, especially with the rise of social media websites, as Facebook and MySpace. You don't want to go putting where you live on there and stuff, and your birth date and stuff like that. It's like, hey, everybody, happy birthday. It's my birthday. So okay, well, that's part of your information. We can use that to exploit you. Regularly back up your data and stuff like that, and then use your firewalls will help. I know that if you get a virus and you can't know for sure if it's completely removed, I do know that reformatting your hard drive will give you a lot better, peace of mind in that. And it's good to do that, maybe once or twice a year, because it'll breathe new life into your computer and stuff like that, and make it brand new again. So if you ever get a sluggish computer, reformatting it, it should become like a daily thing, is backing up your software or your data. Cloud protection against threats is fairly new, and there will be newer methods as the years progress, and using antivirus software is just one of the line of defense among the many other ways to help protect users from malicious attackers. Also, since there are so many different threats, shouldn't antivirus software be named computer security instead? Questions?
Okay, one question. Suggestion, maybe some free suggestions of antivirus software that you suggest or recommend?
Like I said, the Casper Sky was always on the top 3.
Okay.
You know how, like, when you watch commercials, it'll be like, you know, Ford versus the Ram, you know.
Yeah.
It's like, this is so much better than the Ram, or they'll, like, you know, compare the two.
Right.
Well, Casper Sky was always in the top 3 list on all the different websites I went to for antivirus software.
Is that right?
I think there's a trial software version for just about any software. And then one thing, too, they also mentioned that it's better to purchase, like, from a well-known manufacturer as to using free antivirus software, because it's more updated and stuff like that, and they keep it up to date. To where if it's free, they don't really care. I mean, it's free. Why should we update it so much?
All right, good presentation. Let's give a hand. Good job. All right, next up. All righty. Oh, here you go. And yours was on?
Fiber optics.
All right, so that's advanced and back. Advanced and back.
All right. Whew.
All right, let's give Danielle our attention. It's all yours.
All right, thank you. I'm Danielle, and I'm going to talk to you guys about fiber optic data cabling. I don't know where to stand. Okay, so fiber optics, simply put, is the use of light signals to transmit data. Oh, come on. Why is it not working? The light signals need a transmission medium, which are very thin strands of optically pure glass that can be as thin or thinner than a human hair. Hundreds or thousands of fibers are joined together to form bundles known as fiber optic cables. The purpose of this paper is to explain how fiber optic technology works, outline the history of fiber optics, the current and future uses of fiber optic data cabling, along with a copper versus fiber comparison. There are basically 3 elements composing an optical fiber. The core is the center, made of thin, transparent glass, where the light signals actually travel. Surrounding the core is the cladding, which reflects the light waves back into the core. The buffer coating is the outer layer that protects the fiber from damage. Many fibers bundled together are known as fiber optic cabling. The outer layer of the fiber optic cable is further protected with a covering known as a jacket. Light travels through the core, constantly bouncing from the cladding. And this is known as total internal reflection. Kind of a little diagram there. Pretty easy to explain. If you were to shine a light down a hallway, you could bounce the light down the hallway using mirrors. That's kind of the same concept. Next. The fiber optic relay system that consists of a transmitter, the cabling itself, an optical read generator, and an optical receiver. The transmitter produces and encodes light signals. It is generally physically close to the cabling and may have a lens to focus the light onto the fiber more precisely. Lasers have more power than LEDs, light-emitting diodes, but can be more affected by temperature change, and they're more costly. Fiber optic cabling can conduct signals over long distances. An optical read generator may be necessary in the system if the signal boost is needed, especially for very long distances, as in undersea cabling for transoceanic lines. The fibers in an optical regenerator have a special coating called a doping. When a degraded signal comes into contact with the doping, the doped molecules become lasers themselves. A new, stronger signal is then emitted from the doped molecules, and an optical receiver receives and decodes the light signals and sends the digital signals to your telephone or computer, etc. All right. There's many paths that a light signal can travel. The paths are also called modes. The core's diameter determines the number of modes that can exist in a fiber optic cable. Modes are important because they can affect the quality of the data. Modal dispersion is a term used to describe a loss of data integrity due to the multiple paths of light taken through the fiber. Modal dispersion spreads out the light pulses, eventually blending them together and resulting in a loss of data. There are two ways of handling modal dispersion: single-mode fiber and multi-mode fiber. Single-mode fiber is limited to only one wavelength per core due to the reduction in diameter of the core. Multi-mode fibers are specially manufactured to control the possible modes by allowing different light paths to run at different speeds. However, the signals are made to reach their destination at approximately the same time. Next, I'm going to go into kind of a history of fiber optic technology. And first of all, it's been around since, it's been implemented in today's society since the 70s, the 1970s, but optical science can be dated back to the 1790s. The Chop brothers of France developed an optical telegraph system that relied on human operators relaying light signals to other operators in nearby towers. In the 1840s, Swiss physicist Daniel Colladin and French physicist Jacques Babinet demonstrated how light could be directed along water jets in a fountain. And in 1854, John Tyndall, a British physicist, showed a light signal traveling through a curved water stream. And this proved that light waves can be bent. In 1880, the famous Mr. Alexander Graham Bell came up with an optical telephone system called the photophone. Unfortunately, it didn't really stick, and his earlier invention, the telephone, took over in popularity. And also in 1880, William Wheeler invented a system of pipes that lit up homes with an arc lamp that was shown along the pipes from the basement of the house. The pipes were coated with a very reflective material in order to transmit the light throughout the house. In 1888, Austrian doctors Roth and Roos used bent glass rods to light up body cavities during surgical procedures. In 1895, the first attempt at television was made by French engineer Henri Saint-René. His system used bent glass rods to guide light images. And in 1898, David Smith, an American, tried to patent a dental illuminator made from a curved glass rod. But he was denied, I believe, due to a patent by the doctors that lit up the body cavities during surgery. Okay. Next, we have the 1920s. More television work came from John Logie Baird and Clarence W. Hansel. They patented using arrays of transparent rods to transmit images for television and facsimiles. And in 1930, Heinrich Lamm, who was a German medical student, was the first person to transmit an image through a bundle of optical fibers. He was denied a patent, though, due to the patent that had already came into effect of Hansel. And in 1951, Holger Moller applied for a Danish patent on fiber optic imaging, in which the fibers are cladded with a transparent low-index material. His patent was also denied due to Hansel's. And in 1954, Abraham Van Heel developed a cladded fiber system that was revolutionary in reducing crosstalk and signal interference. Also in 1954, Charles Townes and his colleagues developed the maser, meaning microwave amplification by stimulated emission of radiation. And then later on in 1958, Mr. Townes, along with a colleague, Arthur Shawlow, went on to develop the laser. 1961, American Optical's Elias Snitzer published his theory on single-mode fibers. It demonstrated a laser directed through an ultra-thin fiber. It was suited for medical use, but not for communications due to too much light loss. In 1964, Charles Cow and George Hockham of Standard Communications Laboratories in England published their theory that removing impurities in the fibers could drastically reduce light loss. In 1970, scientists at Corning Glass Works reached their goal of making single-mode fibers with attenuation less than 20 decibels per kilometer. In 1973, Bell Laboratories developed the process that still remains the industry standard for fiber optic data cabling manufacturing. It involves a process that heats oxygen and chemical vapors to form an ultra-transparent glass that forms a low light loss fiber. In 1975, the very first non-experimental fiber optics link was used by a UK police department. In 1977, the first fiber optic telephone lines were used in Long Beach, California. Yay! Now, in the late 70s and early 80s, many telephone companies began to switch their infrastructures over to fiber optics. In 1986, Sprint comes available, introduces its 100% all-digital, all-fiber optics network. Also in 1986, David Payne of the University of Southampton and Emmanuel Deservier of Bell Laboratories invented an erbium-doped fiber amplifier, which eliminated the need for an optical-electrical-optical repeater. In 1988, the first transatlantic fiber optic telephone cable is put into use. I guess I didn't. Okay. 1991, optical amplifiers that are built into the cabling itself were invented by Payne and Deservier. The system was able to carry 100 times more information than cabling with electronic amplifiers. In 1996, the first trans-Pacific all-fiber optic cable that uses all optical amplifiers was laid. And finally, in 1997, the FLAG, which stands for Fiber Optic Link Around the Globe, began the infrastructure for the internet. Yeah. Oh, I have 1 minute left? Okay. All right, I'll be quick. Fiber optic data cabling carries data over long distances. It's revolutionized the telecommunication industry. Many companies are upgrading their old copper-based systems with new fiber optic systems to improve speed, capacity, and clarity. Today, a variety of industries, including medical, military, telecommunications, industrial, data storage, networking, and broadcast industries, are able to apply and use fiber optic technology in a variety of applications. And the demand to use new communication services is ever increasing in modern society. There's been many predictions for almost as long as fiber optic communications has been around that fiber optics would extend into the home or business. Consumers are increasingly choosing voice, video, and data services, also known as triple play from all the cable companies. This creates a need for high-speed access services. Until recently, traditional telecommunications providers and cable companies have mainly gone with XDSL or a hybrid fiber coax network in order to utilize their existing copper cabling. However, these service providers and a growing number of municipalities are starting to realize that only fiber will provide a foolproof network to serve all consumer needs. As a result, fiber to the home networks are being installed in volume around the globe. And last but not least, a fiber versus copper debate in which fiber wins significantly. Fiber can be made for less than the equivalent length of copper cabling. It's thinner than copper, therefore it takes up less space in the ground, has higher bandwidth, operates at higher speeds, has less signal degradation. It's better than copper at resisting electromagnetic interference. It's lightweight, weighs less than comparable copper cabling. It's also non-flammable. It's ideally suited for digital signals, and upgrading is easy. There are fewer nodes and substations to replace, and fiber costs less to maintain. It has also been called a green technology because it uses less energy than copper due to the use of low-power optical transmitters instead of high-voltage electrical transmitters. Electrical signals over copper wire use more energy than light signals over fiber, and the additional nodes and substations use more energy as well. And in conclusion, we've learned what fiber optics technology is, how it works. I've outlined the history as well as some current and future uses. Comparing copper and fiber, the results are pretty clear. Fiber optics is probably the way of the future for wired data transmission. That's it. Thank you. Any questions?
Actually, I kind of have a question.
Okay.
That's always confused me and whatnot about fiber is, I don't know this, but with, it being glass, how are they able to make it so flexible?
Honestly, I wondered that myself, and I didn't find that anywhere in my research. How does it not break? Sorry I couldn't answer it, but
It's made of a flexible material, it's glass.
yeah.
Glass can be
It could even be made out of plastic too, yeah.
Right, yep,
Mm-hmm.
yep. All right, good
All right.
presentation. Let's give her a hand.
Thank you.
And the microphone.
Oh.
You can go give it to her. Great, good job. Okay, and yours on, let's just go. Appreciate our attention, it's all yours.
Today I'm going to talk about malicious code. You may not. Right or left?
Right, what you have to put it at the, you see,
Oh,
it
yeah.
towards the computer. and
There we
you're
go.
good to
Malicious code.
Yep.
Today I chose the topic malicious code for a research paper in hopes to understand how it all began and how to avoid it. First I'm going to go over a little bit of history, and then I will discuss what malicious code actually is and how to avoid it. Okay, a little bit about the history. In 1949, there was a mathematician named John Newman who actually described a program that resembles what a computer virus is today. It wasn't until the 60s that an actual virus was created. It was created by a group of programmers that created a game called Core Wars. Core Wars would reproduce and saturate the memory of the other player's computer. The same programmers who created the game also created the first antivirus called the Reaper. The Reaper would actually destroy the copy that was created by the Cold War game. In the 80s, MS-DOS was becoming the main operating system across the world. In the beginning, the software still lacked some hardware elements, which became a target of a virus that was called the Brain. The Brain was created in Pakistan, which attacked the boot sectors of a disk so their content would not be accessed. This year, the first Trojan was also created, called pct110. Shortly thereafter, people who wrote viruses realized that infecting files could be even more harmful to systems. So then it continued. In 1987, a virus called Survivo2 appeared. The virus infected COM files and opened the door to viruses called Jerusalem and Varenes 13. The worst was still to come in 1988. A virus called Morris worm appeared, infecting around 6,000 computers. From that date up to 1995, the types of malicious codes that are known today started being developed. As you can imagine, slowly but surely, viruses began adapting to new situations and then became a worldwide epidemic, which opened a new era for computer viruses. Once economies started realizing that viruses were an issue with security is when users started to discover antiviruses. What is malicious code? Well, in the beginning, before there was internet or email viruses, before there was internet or email, viruses would spread by floppy disk, removable drives, CDs, etc., containing files that are already infected in an executable boot sector. Once a virus got into your system, it would infect files on your system. Some virus code was triggered by a certain event. The programmer could say to activate at a certain time. Until that time, it would just hibernate. One virus that was like this was called the Chernobyl. It would wait for a certain time, then overwrite the flash BIOS, which is needed to control the PC device. This began in April 26, 1998, and was a real impact for the next 2 years and still is. Back then, viruses would spread very slowly, and when I mean slow, I mean it would take 10 years to have a global effect. Now a virus can cause global effects in less than 10 minutes because of the internet. In the past, malicious code was very obvious to the user. An example is the ping pong virus, which displayed a ball bouncing from one side to the other. Nowadays, however, programmers actually like to keep the malicious code as discreet as possible so the user doesn't even know that anything is occurring. Another kind of malicious code is called a love letter. The virus sends a false message to trick the user into accepting the message. Once the internet started being widely used, the virus called the worm came about. The worm is a virus that inserts a HTML code in the body of the email message. So basically, in conclusion, malicious code is when it is used for breaching security, damaging a system, or cause unwanted effects. Malicious code is known as many terms that include attack scripts, viruses, worms, Trojan horse, and backdoor. Once malicious code gets inside its environment, it can cause mail server failure by sending out tons of email messages. It can also steal data, delete files, and other harmful actions against one's operation system. How to avoid? In the old days, companies asked that you just didn't bring in anything off your computer that you had saved on a floppy disk. But now that companies aren't, floppy disk isn't used as much, the internet is the most common carrier of malicious code. You should never open an email message that you don't know who it came from. It could be a love letter virus. Also, there are numerous antivirus programs out there today. To understand how protection works, you should know that there are two components, a technical component and an analytical component. The technical component is a program function and algorithms that can be analyzed by the analytical component. The analytical component is the decision-making part of the system. It not only consists of an algorithm, but it also comes up with a verdict about the data. Once detected, then the antivirus can determine what to do with the verdict. Depending on the user's security policy, the system may notify the user, request further instructions, or place the file in quarantine. An antivirus system uses many different methods. One method is scanning files. This method just uses a simple comparison of byte sequences against known signatures. This method is old but not out of date. Modern antiviruses software actually still use this, just not as the sole method. Another method is emulation. It basically breaks the code into commands and then launches these commands into a virtual environment. It all works okay in the virtual. If all works okay in the virtual environment, the data is classified as okay. Another one, sandbox, is also another method, and it's closely related to emulation. The thing that makes it different is that it actually runs in a live environment, but keeps it controlled until it's done reviewing the code. Then there is a system event monitoring, which, unlike emulator and sandbox that observes each program separately, this system actually observes all programs simultaneously. A good analogy of this is the following. A emulator is like a nanny that continually watches over a child to make sure he or she doesn't do anything undesirable. System event monitoring is like kindergarten teacher who supervises an entire group of children, and the system anomaly detection can be compared to giving children full reign while keeping records of their grades. And just like children, these technologies are developing all the time. As I stated, there are many different malware detection methods. There is no such thing as a universal solution or the best solution. Each process has its advantages and drawbacks. The user has to keep in mind on how vulnerable their conditions are to help them best figure out what type of security they should use. An example would be a person who has no restrictions as to what add-ons they put on their computer or scripts. They should be very concerned about security measures. So in conclusion, I have discussed the history of malicious code, what malicious code is, and lastly, what kind of antiviruses are out there that help protect from getting a virus. Malicious code has been around since the 60s, which means it's been around for 50 years. There really is an end in sight. The more we evolve, the more programmers evolve in creating this code. That's it. Question?
As far as in your research, what was the most recent malware maybe you found in your research that, you know, was you studying in the last year maybe or 2 years?
I do not know. I don't know which one's the recent one.
Okay. All right. Well, good presentation. Let's give it in. Good job.
All right. Next. Okay, who's next? Number 5.
I think it's me.
Go on. Sounds good to me.
I'll go for it. I'm not worried.
There you go.
That's right. I wore my nice gym shorts today. Mine's on malicious code. Oh no, they're always on. Always on. You guys ready for this? It's a short PowerPoint. I like to keep it.
You only have 10 minutes now.
Oh, I'll make it in 10. I'm a fast talker.
Let's do it.
All right. Well, we just heard one on malicious code, so not to be outdone or anything, but I'm actually going to go over well, my paper kind of goes over similar sorts, how it got started, what can you do to prevent it, and what different types of malware there actually is. I'm just going to go ahead, and you guys don't need to see that. Didn't add much. There's a lot of different ones, and like for this case, a worm is something that gets on it without attaching to a program. And the most famous one was the Explorer.zip, which actually would delete Windows Office and all your Windows stuff and basically just shut down your computer that way. There are viruses. One of the most famous ones was Code Red, which was around 2002, which it didn't do much. It just sent you to a website and said you've been hacked by the Chinese, which nothing really harmful, just kind of annoying. There's spyware like keyloggers, which are actual hardware, but then those also go in with Trojan horses, which can leave a security gap, and then someone can access that and get through like bank information, passwords, anything like that. And then adware, which just pop-ups and garbage, which actually that happened on my computer. I don't know what I had, but it wouldn't let me, anytime I'd Google something, it would send me to a different website than what I Googled. And it shut down all my security, and then when I went to download, like Malwarebytes, which is a free one, it wouldn't let me download. It kept sending me to different sites. So I actually had to go to and download it through like a torrent, through like a peer-to-peer website, download Malwarebytes to remove this, which was kind of annoying, but like with yours, you said you can't always see the instant gratification of, oh, I scanned it, it must be gone, which that's actually what I got. I was like, oh, yes, I can do things on my computer. I mean, granted, it didn't shut anything down, it just wouldn't let me Google things, which in this day and age, it's kind of iffy. And one of the first, how the stand is bugging me. One of the first viruses was actually called the ELK cloner, which was on floppy disks, which is what you were saying with don't bring in outside floppy disks. And what it does is it replicates itself. So it was on the floppy disk, you put it in the computer, it replicates itself to the computer. Then if you put a new floppy disk in, it'll replicate itself to the floppy disk, and so on and so forth until, all of these get it. And this one in particular didn't do much. As you were saying in your presentation, it's actually on the 50th boot. It would show a screen with a poem on it about, let me see if I have the poem on here. The title page is gone. It said, ELK cloner, the program with a personality. It'll get on all your disks. It will infiltrate your chips. Yes, it's a cloner. It will stick to you like glue. It will modify your RAM too. Send in the cloner. So, I mean, nothing really like too serious, but I mean, nothing really you want to have floating around. Some other things to come of this, there are beneficial viruses and beneficial worms. The beneficial virus, what it did was, I wrote it down because I was, basically what it would do is file compression for you and make sure everything's as small as possible and save space on your computer, which granted it'll still get picked up in antivirus software, and you're not really going to, the average user isn't going to notice that their files are getting compressed, so nothing too fancy. The worm, the good worm, it would update your Windows for you and make sure all your software was up to date, which that's actually kind of cool, but I wouldn't want that. Again, I wouldn't want that on my computer. I'm actually going to skip the slide forward. Oh, defense for your computer. Two things that we went over, antivirus, and then there's also firewall. With antivirus, some of the big names, Norton, McAfee, and then Malwarebytes is a free one that I use. It works fine for me. I mean, like they all say out there, they all compare each other. I'm sure they're all pretty much on the standard. Gets off most viruses. Nothing going to be too crazy. And then there's the Casper Sky, Bitdefender, and stuff like that. And those are going to scan it and basically get rid of viruses and malware off your computer. And then the next step is firewall, which there's 3 different kinds. There's network, application, and then the proxy server. The network is basically on the internet. All incoming packets, it checks the IP address, where it's sent from, like the code on it, and then where it was sent from. And you can set that up. The admin can set up which IP addresses are acceptable and which aren't. So it kind of limits it. I don't think anything here, but I know at one of my jobs it wouldn't let you surf most of the web. There's only like 3 or 4 websites that it would allow you to go to, and so frustrating. But I actually was at Radio Shack, so like I couldn't go. You can go to basically like phone websites. So I can go to Sprint, Verizon, and I don't remember the third one. But other than that, like I couldn't go. I could use Google, and then only a few websites would go from there. So when people would come in, one guy was trying to make like what you were talking about with the fiber for his hot tub. Actually, it would shoot basically a rod of water out, and then it would change colors. And he was trying to build that, and he asked me for help, and so I tried to Google it, but I kept getting shut down every step of the way. And I was like, okay, well, you're kind of on your own on this one. Application firewall, like using it on different applications, basically on all programs. And it's going to be similar to the network. There's things that you can and can't do. And then a proxy server, which is going to be just like a buffer for, you're behind the proxy server, so I don't remember whose presentation it was. I think it was yours, where you send out to the, for Wi-Fi, you send it out, it authenticates it, and then it goes on past that and comes back. And basically you're behind it. And that's nice because if you do something to cause a security breach on your system, you're behind the server, so it's not going to be immediate. There's going to be no real, you can't really mess it up because you're hidden behind that IP address. There's not going to be any immediate damage. Basically, other than that, the only real thing with the antiviruses that are going to be the problem are going to be, like with the Trojan or some of the antivirus programs, it's some of the higher level stuff, which if it gets breached, it can cause a hole right in your security. So like if there's a problem with Norton or McAfee or Malwarebytes, it'll a giant breach in your security, which anyone can get through. Other than that, I've kind of showed different types of malware and different defenses for it, and hopefully this will help you in the future to kind of figure out what you need.
What was the software you mentioned that you used?
Malwarebytes. It's a free download. You can pretty much get it. Well, you can go to their website and get it. Though with a lot of free stuff, they were saying like you have to hit the right prompts to get it. Otherwise, it can cause security problems. I'm not sure, like when you're setting it up or when you're getting it. I downloaded it through a peer-to-peer, so I didn't have to do any of that, which kind of made it easy for me. But yeah, I mean, it's usually, actually, this is a really secure one. Well, I'm not going to go into everything I've downloaded, but it's real helpful.
All right, excellent. All right, next up. And yours on?
Wi-Fi. Actually, more like wireless technology in general. I don't know. You'll see. You have the remote.
Right there?
Yeah.
All right.
Do you have the remote or just
Yeah, I put it up here on the.
Oh.
Up here. Yep.
Okay. Well.
And to advance.
Right.
Yep. And go back left. All right. Get more attention.
How you doing? I know I can't top him. So I'm just going to go over a little bit about wireless technology and LANs, and then go by a step-by-step process of how to use a Linksys router to set up some security for you. History. Wireless technology actually started a long time ago, in the 1880s. German physicist named Heinrich Hertz. That's where we get gigahertz, megahertz, and all that. He was the first one to discover and produce radio waves by just doing this experiment where basically he just used an arc of electricity and then had a coil next to it about 2 yards away, and he was able, because the waves would come off the arc, create a current in that coil, and there you go. And then we have this macaroni guy. I'm not even going to try and pronounce his first name. He was dubbed the father of radio. He expanded on the experiments. He was able to create more powerful waves over longer distances and created the first transatlantic transmission in 1901 from the Newfoundland coast to England. And then in World War II, the radio technology kind of took off from there, being used to send transmissions with battle plans, the whole Navajo code and whatnot. And then radar to use to defend England from the German air attacks, which actually saved a lot of lives. And then in the 70s, 1971, the University of Hawaii, I don't know, I couldn't find exactly why they did it, but they just decided to try to make to send data over the radio waves. So they created what they called the Aloha Net, which was 7 computers spread out over the 4 islands of Hawaii in sort of a star topology, and then they weren't able to really transfer much. But still, it was able to work. And then in 1972, they connected to the mainland net of ARPANET through the first gateway. Now we're going to talk about, if you're going to use wireless networks at your home. Things you need to talk about: the cost of the hardware, the amount of traffic you think you're going to get, the area you're going to be covering, and security. Routers, they cost anywhere between $20 to $100, sometimes more depending on what you get. Brands: Linksys, Netgear, Cisco, D-Link, etc. Speeds: 3 main speeds, 3 main speed standards. The B, it was early, it's not really used anymore. And in 2003 it was replaced by the G, which is the most common today. And it's great for, at home, just surfing the internet, doing normal things, whatnot. And then there's the N. It's a lot faster, which I recommend for anybody who's into gaming, any sort of media transfers, anything like that. And from what I saw in my research, it should be the standard within the next couple of years. It should be replacing G. Now, access point placement. This, for a home network, this really isn't an issue because the range is going to be far enough for you. But this is just showing you what you need to think about, where to put it to cover the whole area. And then in the next one, please excuse my crude paint use. This just shows in a large area. Imagine this is a school, if you could. Just placing the different access points to create an overlap to try and minimize, if not eliminate, all uncovered areas. And there you go. All right, security. Reasons for securing your network. Hackers. Everybody knows about them. Viruses and other damaging attacks, putting stuff on your stuff. Plus, stealing storage space. I've actually seen quite a few people that have found ghost drives on their network and everything, and they don't have any clue how they got there. Then they look, oh, their routers aren't secured. They take that away. They get rid of the ghost network. Nothing ever happens again. Then illegal downloading. I put this on here for my own sake. I had a personal experience. About a year ago, I didn't realize, I guess something had happened. I had changed routers. I forgot to set up my security. And then, I'm just coming home one day. I check my mail. I get a letter from Warner Brothers saying, with a cease and desist letter saying that I downloaded Inception and a couple other movies, and if I didn't cease and desist and remove everything from my hard drive, that I'd be fined $250,000 or more. So watch out for that. Security types, WEP and WPA. From what I understand and what I was able to research, the main difference between the two is WEP kind of uses the same key for everything, for all devices and all packets. So if you use a packet sniffer or any other software, a hacker through a few runs can get that key and then have access to your network. The WPA uses a unique key for each device and for each session, so it keeps it a lot safer. It is harder to crack, but not impossible. And I actually saw today that just not too long ago for the WEP, some German programmers were actually able to crack it in, I think, like 45 seconds or less. So, yeah. Now, step by step on how to implement the security. For this, I use my home router. It's a Linksys by Cisco E1500, I think. So, and I'm in Windows 7, so that's what the pictures are going to be. Step one, you open up any web browser. Check your manual for the default gateway, the default IP address. Usually it's 192.168.1.1. I believe Netgear, I don't know if they still do this, but I think they at one point were like 10.0.0.1 or something like that. But anyway, you can always check the manual and get that address. Then you're going to be given a prompt for username and password. Now, I've actually helped a lot of people set up their routers. And I don't know why, but they seem to think because this prompt comes up, they're already secured. They don't realize there's the default username and password. Usually something like admin or blank username with an admin, or for Netgear, it's admin password. So plug that in. This is what you're going to see, basically. You put the address in the web bar. Then that prompt comes up. You enter that. Then step two, this will bring you to the basic setup page. You go to the wireless tab here. Then you click the security link. And then there's a drop-down menu with all the different security protocols, which actually happens to be a lot. You select the protocol you want. You click into the passphrase box, enter your password, click Save Settings. There's all the different options. You got WPA, mixed mode, personal, the enterprise, WEP, radius, or nothing. It's just showing you that. And then, oh crap, what happened? Oh, I think somehow something got deleted. Anyway, after you do that, you have to reconnect to your network. To do that, if you're on, how to do it on Mac, I'm not exactly sure. But on a Windows PC, usually, especially nowadays, if you're wirelessly connected, you're going to have on your system tray some sort of, icon. You click that, it'll bring up a list of all the different networks in your area. You pick yours, you connect, you put the password in, you click connect, and you're ready to go. Now the future of wireless products, appliances, TVs, and toys and such. Like this picture here, this is actually a toaster that will print the day's weather forecast and temperatures on it on their piece of toast, which is actually pretty cool. And my grandparents actually have a fridge they just bought, I think for like $2,500, but it has a about like a 6-inch touchscreen on it that they can use, and they can get weather forecasts on it. They can hook it up to their Gmail calendars and their Google calendars to get, give them their reminders and whatnot. They can put shopping lists on it. They can send that to their Gmail accounts and a whole bunch of other stuff. Toys. Toys, I actually saw something while going Christmas shopping with my brother for his son, and it's these like the little Leapfrog tablets. Now they're pretty much full-on tablets now, but you can actually, there's some now that you can just run a program on your computer, and the tablet does like, simple math stuff and stuff like that, but you can actually track in real time if you want what the child is doing on the tablet. I think that's kind of cool. There's a lot of talk about wireless power, like those pads that you can just put your phone on and it charges your phone and other things like that. And there's been actually a lot of work on like what Nikola Tesla used to do with the Tesla coils and sending power over the air. That's not going to be anywhere near probably in our lifetime, but it's still kind of cool that they're working on it. Yeah, see, that's where all that stuff went. You can't really tell. I mean, with the advancements in GPS, fiber optic cabling, and just all this other kind of stuff we're doing, you don't know where it's going to go. You don't know how fast it's going to get, and it's revolutionized how we communicate, how we travel. Planes without wireless would be useless pretty much nowadays. And it pretty much controls our entire lives with everybody living on their cell phones, living on Facebook, all that. We're going to need it in the future, and I'm pretty sure it's going to get pretty advanced. I think that would be it. Any questions? That is actually right now a concept that should, from what I saw, it should be done by next year or 2014. So they don't have any prices, but it's a concept.
All right, next person. All right, next. Who's next? Which one was yours now?
Should be the last one there. Yeah. Yep.
Okay, we are on the last one, is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
All right, after this last presenter,
Do I get it?
one more?
Oh.
It's okay. After this last presenter, next week,
Oh.
everyone else is left to go, and I'm going to bring pizza next week. I usually get a pepperoni and some cream pizza is what I usually bring. So if you guys could bring chips, soda is good, any desserts or whatever like that is fine. And I'll also bring plates and napkins, so just remember that. So right after he's finished tonight, we're done.
You'll bring plates and napkins?
I will bring plates and napkins, yeah. We'll bring plates and napkins and the pizza. You guys can bring everything else. Sound good?
Oh. It's making me wait. That's fine. Yeah. Okay. I did mine on remote access. A lot of tools we've actually discussed here in class and various things I'm going to talk about. So, back in the early days, back in the 70s, 80s, we did have networks, but we didn't have much in the way of remote access. A lot of businesses had to have IT staff on site. They had to have separate offices with IT staff, or they had mobile IT people who would run between offices to fix problems, and that was a huge headache. It's a lot of money. It was pretty costly for them. Collaboration. To collaborate back then, it was you get everybody in one office, you fly them in from around the world so they can sit there and listen to your presentation. Very unlike today. Some advantages. You forget a file at home, you could hop right on your PC, you can grab it. Very easy, a lot of tools available to do that. I don't know about you guys, I have to fix problems for my family all the time. They call me about once a week, somebody broke something. So I remote into my family's computer and I fix the problem. It takes me 5 minutes and I can do it while I'm at work. So piece of cake. And web conferencing today, some of the really powerful tools like WebEx, you can get 2,000 people on a conference, a video conference with high definition streaming. So you've got a person in Japan, you got a person in California, they can listen to the same conference, real time, high def, just beautiful setups. So some products you can use for remote access, there's a lot of variety here. Keep in mind, in my research, I found over 80 different products you can use to actually do remote access depending on what you want. These are just some examples. Similarities between some of those, file transfer is pretty much a standard nowadays. No matter what product you're using, if you need to pull a file off a machine, put one on, do repairs with bat files, various things, you can do it. You can do it cross-platform in some cases, but you can do it. And they're all very simple. They use wizards to set them up, so you can give it to your grandma. She can click next 3 times, and you're good to go. Some of them are a little more expensive than others. PC Anywhere, Symantec's product, is about $200 a license. It's a full-featured suite. You can literally do anything from video conferencing with it to sharing files, sharing control, everything like that. The lap link isn't really that popular anymore. It was used once upon a time. It's a cheaper license, and it does basically the same thing. Some of these others here, VNC is an open source product. Tight VNC is the one I chose, but there's 50, 100 different types of VNC. It's an open source product, works universally across all platforms, so if you need to work with a Mac client or a Linux client, VNC is probably your choice. Otherwise, you've got Microsoft's Remote Desktop program. It was originally Microsoft's product. It's since gone open source, so you can actually get on a Linux box now and remote into Microsoft desktops. And Apple had Remote Desktop. It's actually just a VNC client as well. So some of the ones that are website driven, these are ones you can log right onto the web. You can access the site. And we've talked about these already. LogMe In and Go to My PC are the 2 really popular ones. They're very simple to set up. You send a personal file, they'll allow you to connect to that machine. Cisco's WebEx was the old lap link. They bought the product and they use it now for teleconferencing, web conferencing. It integrates with their VoIP phones. There's a lot you can do with it, but it's expensive. But yeah, pretty much what I said before. These come in both free and paid versions. The free versions, LogMe In, I know, does 5 PCs. I use that all the time, sharing files from my work PC and home PC. So it's very nice if you forget your classwork or something. You can. I actually did that tonight with this presentation. I hopped on my home PC and just downloaded it. So very nice. Again, they're cross-platform, so it doesn't care if you're on a Linux machine or a Mac. You can get that, put it on a Windows machine, you're good to go. A lot of this I've talked about. WebEx does have a free version. It allows 3 clients. You can do video streaming, it's standard. You can share a web board, so if you've got like a class project you're working on with a group, you can actually connect to each other and share, draw things, share documents, do what you need to. But again, they get pretty pricey. The remote access protocols, there's 2 I'm really going to discuss. There are really, I think I found 8 different varieties, but there's really 2 we use today. RDP, the remote desktop protocol. Microsoft originally developed it. It was used early 80s with their, early 90s with the terminal services, and their early like Windows NT4 would use this. Somewhere around the XP period, 2001, 2002, a lot of open source developers got on board and started developing Linux flavors of this. It is their protocol though, so it's not as supported as remote frame buffer, which is what VNC uses, which is what Apple uses. Virtually every other product is going to use this. LogMeIn uses this. Go to My PC uses this. It's a it is the most popular protocol used today. So there you go. I talk a little bit about virtualized PCs really because when you build a thin client, a stripped down machine, it's remoting into a server. You have a server that runs 100 machines, 200 machines, and a lot of people are doing work from home projects. So they are remoting in using this thin client, doing remote access to a server. And cost studies, one study said $650 a year savings using one of these, just from support, hardware breaking down. You don't have to maintain individual PCs. You've got a thin client with, it's a dummy terminal. It just has a video card, memory, and a processor. So a lot of savings here. A lot of things can be developed still. This is pretty much the wave of the future, things like this and cloud storage. School districts save close to $1 million a year. Same basic concept. They replaced all their students' PCs with thin clients. So they didn't have the same issues with them breaking down. They could swap them out for $100 versus a $5,000 or $1,000 machine. So it was very nice and much easier to maintain for them. Cloud storage itself is a extension of this remote access. Companies got on board. We're basically saying, well, people need to access stuff from home or from afar. Why not give them a central spot where they can pull down those files? Somewhere to save your homework, to save your projects, what have you. So some of the big companies here, Microsoft, Google, Apple, and Dropbox, I believe is just what they're called, are some of the big time players in this. Microsoft's is nice now. With Windows 8, it kind of syncs up with that. It shares everything between that. So if you get a Windows 8 tablet, everything is stored on there and shared for you. Google's Drive, they just went to 10 gigabytes for messaging and everything through Gmail, but it's 5 standard still. And pretty much all of these are available on Windows or Mac. Linux flavors have been, I don't know where they're at. Apple's pretty much the same as the Google software. It's now available for Windows. That was a recent change, actually. And Dropbox starts you off with only 2 gigs of space, but you can actually get up to 16 by referring people to them, by talking about it. They're kind of a small company, so I like to try to support them if I can. So that's pretty much it. I know I went through this quickly, so we can all get out of here. Got a cost savings. There's tons of options out there. There's a lot of research you can do if you look for specific products for what you want to do from a business standpoint. There are programs with better encryption than others. And they're all easy to use. So like I said, if you've got that, grandparents who don't know how to use a computer and you need a remote in, there you go. Any questions?
I know you've already talked about using it.
Yeah.
What's your, kind of elaborate just a few seconds on your opinion to the students who maybe haven't used it?
Oh,
From a
okay.
student perspective, I guess.
Okay. LogMeIn, you have 2 ways to go about it. You can download a client that installs on your machine and opens a folder. I'm thinking of Dropbox. LogMeIn is, you download a client, you can install it to that machine, and you can do easy transfer off of it to a server or to a different machine. It's very easy and it's very bandwidth. There's not a lot of bandwidth required to use it. So I prefer LogMeIn because I can just, I got on that PC right there. It took me 5 seconds to grab the file, send it to myself.
Good
So,
presentation. Give me a hand.
thanks.
Good job. All right, that was the last presenter. I think I got everyone's PowerPoint right for tonight, or you wouldn't have been able to present. I have your hard copy of that. The email that I need from everybody tonight, or the Dropbox from tonight, which I need you to send your research paper to. Let me just highlight that real quick while you're wrapping up here.
Was there an attendance pin for tonight too?
No attendance pin tonight. And while we're talking about attendance, even those that presented tonight, make sure you're here next week. Okay? Please come next week, even though you presented tonight. Please support those that are presenting next week. All right? show you, but for those of you that presented tonight, you're going to be having in this week's folder an area to upload. Some of you have already done this. Upload your research paper. I do not need you to upload your PowerPoint, even though I think some of you might have done that already. Don't worry about it if you did. No big deal. But in week 14 is where you're going to upload your research paper right there. Do not upload your PowerPoint. And then I will put the podcast of everybody's presentation right in here tonight. And so you'll be able to see that by tomorrow morning, probably be up there ready for you to view. But great presentations on it. Everybody did a good job. Good content. Wide variety, even though some of yours were the same title, different content. And so, and students are always worried about covering the same title as another student. You're always going to present something a little bit different than each other. And so you guys did a great job. See you next week. If you have any questions, come up and see me. Oh, by the way, I do have a little toy here if you want to play with it while I'm uploading this. I have an infrared keyboard. A guy I work with during the day does not use. You guys can come play with that if you want to.
What is that for? Is that for your iPad?
Yeah, it's for the iPad. But it can be for anything. It can be for any device.
I mean, it's touchy, but it's awesome.
It is, yeah. So I'll start up a notepad session. There you go. Go and play with it.
How much does that cost?
My thumbs are too big.
Yeah, have you tried this infrared one's pretty cool.
How much does it cost?
I think when he first bought it, the company, it was pretty expensive, like about $300, but I think it's down to like $180 now or something.
Can you expand it out to be bigger? Or?
No.
Or, I mean,
It stays just like that.
huh?
Just like that. So it's about the size of a portable keyboard, but
One of those
infrared.
Pico
So.
projector on a phone. You got a keyboard in front of you, project it onto a wall.
I'm gonna try
There
it.
you go. That's pretty cool.
So you're gonna be there next week for the PowerPoint?
Yes, yes.
Cool.
I
knew you
had
had car problems.
I had a speech this morning, a
Okay.
persuasive speech, and this I didn't have time to come to class last
No, that's
night. I
fine.
had to finish them.
No, that's fine. I just wanna
Uh-huh.
make sure you're gonna be there next week.
Yes, I will
Okay,
be
cool.
there, and I will have my whole entire presentation